1,000 UFO sightings reported around the world every month. 90% of these sightings can be explained, but 10% cannot. Officially and unofficially, the U.S. military has been investigating UFOs since 1947. Their top secret goal is to find out what's behind these unexplained sightings. The Pentagon classifies them as unusual airborne anomalies, but a better term is X-Files. Join us as we explore these unsolved cases, UFO incidents that baffle even the U.S. military. This is Matt Malley's Military X-Files. And now, here's Matt Malley.
Well, welcome to a very special edition of Matt Malley's Military X-Files, a Distant Thunder Radio Network feature. As you can hear, Commander Cobra is at the helm, where Mack, JJ, and Raven, and I believe Club as well, are on secret missions. Switch is on a special mission as well, not so secret. We're going to hear from him in a little bit. But as you know, Mack has been working a number of other projects. He asked me to jump in, to take a show on, and we're very fortunate to have a great guest to join us tonight. A longtime friend of Mack's and mine as well. Has been on this show and my old show a number of times. But before we introduce our special guest, let me tell you who else is co-hosting with me today. We have Val Lofaso. Look, Val is our station, our show Empath. She's also a really good friend to all of us, and she kind of always has the right knack for giving us the read on how the things are going with the show and guests. Off air, she's also a lot of fun when we've talked about her reactions to some of the stuff that's happened on the show in the past. Val, how are you today? And welcome back to Matt Malley's Military X-Files.
Thank you very much, Cobra. I'm very happy to be here. I'm doing great.
Well, thank you very much for jumping around. I want everybody to understand that we're working through time, distance, and space. All the dimensions are being pulled in to pull the show together. This show is going to be done in various time zones, various locations, and various days to put it all together. So I appreciate everyone for taking the time to join us. So Val, thank you very much. Another great co-host with us today, Matt Malley. Some folks will recognize that name right off the bat from Counting Crows. Matt's been on with Mack a number of times. We've become pretty good friends. Matt is a pilot. Also, to all his other talents that he's involved in, and a lot of fun to chat with him. And I have a pretty good email conversation going at almost any given time. And Matt, welcome and great. Thank you very much for joining us from the West Coast today.
Thanks for having me, Cobra. And you're like a flying mentor to me, is what you're, like a big brother.
Well, I appreciate that. That's very appreciative, and I'm glad you didn't say like a stepfather or flying stepfather, that you put it in the brother category. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Well, our special guest is Mary Joyce. Everyone who's been with this show at Matt Malley's Military X-Files in the past probably will recognize Mary's name right off the bat. For those that are new, Mary has an incredible reputation as an investigator, researcher, a historian, I would say, is a fair way to put it. She presents a lot of incredible information on her website, Skyships Over Cachers. We'll talk about that, and I will give you a very specific spelling that you can track that down. But if you Google Mary Joyce UFO or Mary Joyce Paranormal, her website shows up pretty quickly. As I've said, she's done a number of incredible projects that I've been really impressed with. But one thing that I've always been, aside from the friendship that Mary has so kindly shared with me, is that she has the ability to get people that are insiders, people that want to be quote unquote whistleblowers in the paranormal, especially the UFO and ET kind of thing, to come forward and talk. And Mary, welcome as always. It's great to have you back. I'm Matt Malley, Military X-Files. I know Mack is sorry that he's going to miss you. How are you tonight?
I'm doing well. It's good to hear all of you.
Thank you. And it's great to hear your voice as well. Now, you're in North Carolina in the mountains, correct?
That's correct. And so one of you is up in New York, and I don't know where the other two are, but I guess we are spread out all over the place.
Yeah, we are in all points. Bill Skywatcher, who's producing our show today, is in New York. Bill overcame a few dozen obstacles in the last 12 hours to make sure we could get everything together for the show. Another part of those spacing, time, and distance and dimensions thing that I was talking about. So I always thank Skywatcher for his hard efforts to pull everything together. Val is up in New England where I am. She's in New Hampshire. I'm in Maine. And Matt is out in California. And Mary, do me a favor, just start out, introduce everybody to your website. And I think a brief introduction before we jump into some of the things you wanted to talk about, how you got started in this, I think is really a phenomenal testament to your work.
The website is called skyshipsovercashers.com. And the reason we named it that was because we kept seeing all these UFOs, all different kinds that were showing up over this mountaintop town called Cashers. So when we started the website back in 2008, we thought that's all we were going to do. Well, as you might have guessed, we were totally wrong. This has grown way beyond its name. But that's how it actually started. My interest in UFOs and topics like that started when I lived down in Florida. I actually lived between Patrick Air Force Base and the Kennedy Space Center, got to meet people at NASA, got to see UFOs. And so that's where the impetus for all of this started. But the website started in 2008.
Now, you pretty quickly established yourself as a conduit, a point of contact for people to reach out to you. Now, it's easy for me to understand. I've known you now for a number of years. We've had a lot of great conversations, emails. All the shows we've done together have been interesting. You're very non-judgmental. I know you have heard some pretty crazy things, and you always put a very, I think, very balanced presentation of information there. And you do, I think, a pretty decent job of vetting people as well. You've been very diligent about that as well.
That goes back to my newspaper background.
Sure.
I worked for two major newspapers, and so the criteria that we used in that line of work, I still apply to this website.
And I think it shows. It's quite evident that your level of integrity remains very, very high, and I think that's important. But you've also had a lot of interest, experience, as well as findings, I think is a good way to put it, in things like underground bases activities, Bigfoot activities. And this is none of the things that you were really set out or interested in doing. You weren't doing this kind of work before you started the website and jumped into it, correct?
That's correct. But can I just jump ahead and tell you what I'm the most excited about right now?
Absolutely. Let's jump to it. Okay.
This week, I discovered 27 entrances into Mars, and we're talking about square-cut entrances like post and lintel, and they line up in a line, and they go from north to south. They're spread out over 16 miles, and they're pretty darn good. They're very large. Typically, they're around 400 feet, which would be 4 football fields in width, and the largest one is just over 1,000. Now, I discovered entrances way back in like 2014 on Mars using Google Earth Mars.
Right.
But this time I changed the compass. So instead of having north to the north, I moved it over into the east position, and it was much easier to find these things. And they just about perfectly lined up. And so when I find these things on Mars, and I've also found biospheres and large UFOs, I post them on the website, and almost always I have the coordinates on there. So anybody who wants to convince themselves whether this is true or false, they can use those coordinates and go explore these places for themselves. The discovery I made this week of the 27 entrances isn't even on our website yet, so you truly are the first ones to hear me talk about it. And if the world goes the way it's supposed to, it will be posted this coming week.
So what do you think they are? Do you think they are entrances to underground facilities?
I do. And one of the most recent postings we had was a friend of Dr. Von Braun, a friend who I also met back in the 80s. Had private conversations, and even back then he was talking about he felt that there were still intelligent life forms living on Mars, most likely beneath the surface. That was back in the 60s. So he was seeing a lot of, he knew a lot and didn't always talk about it. The source for all this information on my part is Clark McClellan. And he just died in April, and less than a month after he died, his book came out. Now, the government didn't much care for Clark, even though he had worked there for 35 years, because he felt that NASA or the government was holding back too much information and that the public had a right to know, more than they were letting out. And that didn't set well. And so even though he worked there for 35 years as a spacecraft commander, which means he could control the spacecraft from ground control.
Right.
And if there were problems, he knew how to work them out. And like I said, I had the privilege of meeting him for several hours back in '89. And that was at the time when the government was starting to come down on him. And he wasn't totally ousted until '91. They destroyed his career. They destroyed his benefits. He couldn't even publish his information until, after he died. And so in the last year of his life, he was giving these papers to, I guess, a friend, and that was published on May 17th. And if anybody wants to explore that for themselves, and I'll promote the book, the big title is Space, the Final Frontier, and the subtitle would be Secrets NASA Doesn't Want You to Know.
I'm looking forward to reading that book. I've followed a lot of the entries that you've had on the website, and of course our conversations leading up to this show. Quickly, I want to ask Val and Matt. Val, starting with you, what's your reaction to what Mary has just kind of revealed to us or just talked about?
I'm at the point where nothing would surprise me anymore. We keep finding more and more unusual anomalies on Mars. With the technology we have, I love the fact that anybody can go look at these things and we're not dependent on officials. I think it's great that Mary is looking for these things and telling us about this, because it's conversations like this that need to happen among the masses. And I think it's fantastic.
What's your sense? Because we always ask you, you just don't hear things, you feel them as you're listening and experiencing. And even in the medium of the way we put the show together with electronic media, you often are able to come down to it. What's your sense of this? Is it intrigued? Is it angered? Anything like that?
Definitely intrigue, and definitely there's more there to be discovered is what I intuitively feel.
Mm-hmm. Matt, how about yourself?
Yeah, when Mary was talking about the entrances, it was very interesting to me. I know that there's one thing really obvious here, that if we find one single-celled, simple little organism on a moon of Saturn someday, that's it. Game over. We're not alone. That's all it takes. And to think of intelligent life not only out in the universe but nearby in our solar system is really interesting to me. I have an idea for a sci-fi book someday that we finally achieve interstellar travel and we discover that the whole universe is littered with dinosaurs. So Earth turns out to be a freak planet with the humans that are not supposed to exist. So we end up being the most intelligent life in the universe, which is incredibly egotistical. But anyway, I digress. But that was very interesting, Mary, what you were saying.
Mary,
yeah.
Before you get the publishing critique, Mary, to Matt's book thought there, and you two can always get together off air and maybe have him featured on the website. Mary, one of the things I did want to ask you was, do you think that these are active engineering, functioning operations? Do you think that they are ancient, or do you think that they're both?
I think that they're contemporary. I think they're in use now. Some of the things I've discovered, again, using Google Earth Mars, once I've posted on the website, there have been a couple of situations, maybe more than a couple, where within a day or two, it's all been distorted, so you no longer can see them. This has also happened when I found images in Antarctica. And one of when they decide they're going to block them out or distort them, to me that indicates they're very active locations. So if anybody starts playing detective like I've been doing with Google Earth, if you see something fascinating, get a screenshot, because if it's really hot, you may not see it again.
Now, Mary, quickly, have you felt any kind of actual or perceived cyber attacking issues with the site? I don't ever really remember your site going down. I've never really had any trouble looking at stuff. Occasionally, you will say that, if we don't look quickly, you may not be able to see it. When you go to look for links, they sometimes have shut down afterwards, which is not surprising at all in the age that we live in. But have you yourself seen anything on the site directed at it? Do you feel like you've had any kind of attention?
The only time was very, very early on, before even the website started, I think. And I had an old computer. I think it was easy to do stuff with. And it's been so long now, I can't remember the details, but it really went out of whack. It was like shut down. And I had the man who was in charge of fixing all the computers at the nearby university come and look at it. And he was flabbergasted, because the only things that were taken down were my postings about UFOs. So he couldn't figure out how somebody could come in from the outside, just destroy those things and leave everything else intact. With the computer that I have now, I've not experienced anything like that.
It's interesting. So, what else do we have to talk about? I have a million questions, but I want to make sure we cover a lot of the major topics that you wanted to talk about.
Well, I do want to quote von Braun, because, again, this conversation that he had really on beach chairs out on Cocoa Beach with Clark McClellan. And they would go off and be away from everybody else when they were having these NASA events, usually award ceremonies. Right. And that's when von Braun would open up with him. And one of the things he said that's really stuck in my head was, he said that at least some of those of our present human culture may be Martians, because in his opinion, whatever devastated Mars, and he thought it might be because the planet between Mars and Jupiter, was exploded. Other people think it was a nuclear thing that happened on Mars. Right. I do not know which it would be. But he said that they were capable of spaceflight at that time. So there were many of them who fled to Earth, which was the nearest inhabitable planet to them. And I thought it was striking that he said there's probably Martians living among us today.
A couple things I want to ask on this, and then I'm going to ask the co-host to weigh in. Just a couple points I want to make, or comments, and then we can all discuss a little bit. Von Braun, to me, is a very interesting person in all of this. An extremely, extreme's the right word, an extreme background. No matter how you look at it, there's just many, many vectors in this person's life and career. And I think it's recorded much more of what he has said, what he had thought, what he experienced. This remark that it's attributed to him that there were Martians or extraterrestrials amongst us, that seems to really be back in season, in flavor with us now, with the recent report released by the government. I have to just quickly say, no surprise to me that it was what was in it. I won't even say it was disappointing, because I didn't expect anything to come out of it. There are some interesting things in it from an old intel officer's kind of look at it that make me maybe wrinkle my brow a little bit, or say a small aha. But back to von Braun, to me, is a very interesting person in all this. But here's the thing I wanted to ask you all. Do you think that if his open the discussion of his feelings and his conclusions was more mainstream, we would be in a much different place now? Or do you think he just would have been dismissed as crazy? I'll start with you, Mary, and I'll work around the group here.
He was so high up. He was the head of rocketry. So I think it would be really difficult for NASA, for the government, to wipe him out like they did with Clark. So he would not have been just swept away. With that understanding and with his credibility within NASA, I think we would be much further along if the information that he thought and felt back in the 60s had been shared, at least to a larger degree, with the public. We would be much further along in understanding all this.
Very well said. Val, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know a whole lot about, his particular studies, but, I do think that those types of organizations vastly underestimate the majority of the public. I've been working with groups in the New England area on, people who've had UFO and ET encounters. And I think there's a lot more open-mindedness and a lot less fear than we assume that there is. And I think it's the fear that is keeping organizations from saying anything. So I hope we can get to a point where it's more widely talked about in larger conversations.
Well said. Matt, what do you think? Any input?
Oh, yeah. We're talking about von Braun, the guy who helped the whole V2 rocket program during the war, right? That
is correct. He was the father of rocketry for the Nazis. That's correct.
Yes.
Under Operation Paperclip, he was luckily brought to the United States.
What an amazing story he is. I've read about him on Wikipedia and looked him up. And he was hired by NASA because of his knowledge. He was just such a powerful possessor of knowledge, and that he was sort of forgiven for helping bomb London, and it's an amazing story, and became the head of NASA rocketry. And so, he's what's frustrating to me is the thought that governments and organizations are withholding incredible information from the population, when it makes me feel like one of my highest goals in life is to just get a good night's sleep and feel good and be happy. And meanwhile, there's conglomerations of people that are hoarding information that could enlighten the humanity. I can't help but feel insulted, and it would have been nice if von Braun spoke openly about what he knew, and everyone would have just opened up and shared it. That's my thought on this.
You bring up an interesting point, Mary. I didn't mean to interrupt you. Go ahead, Mary.
I'm sure his hands were tied just like the astronauts' hands are tied. So
I think you bring a really good point.
Yeah.
In many ways, he was like a defector. I've met a couple, not much more than a small group, never really one-on-one, but been with a couple groups that were able to speak with defectors. And then almost on every occasion, they were then Soviet and a couple East German ones. And once they enter into that kind of life, they're still doing productive stuff, but they're never quite clear of their past, where they're at. But what I think is really interesting is von Braun obviously thought Mr. McClellan had a kindred heart, a similar outlook, capability, intellectual, friendship, whatever, to share that kind of information with him. Mary, is it fair to say that things started to really go downhill after von Braun passed away from McClellan and he started to become more vocal, or was there something different on the timing?
The years that the two men were, really having time together was in the 60s. Right. It wasn't until the late 80s or 1980s that Clark began to be really squeezed by the government. And I think he left the NASA under duress in either 91 or 92. I don't remember off the top of my head. So no, I don't see, they're two separate worlds, really.
Understood. Well, I think that the 60s is as we now are approaching nearly 70 years separation from it, 60 to 70 years separation from it, that we're starting to come back to this particular part. This decisions made, actions that were taken have, and this probably happens in every decade, but there's something about the change in the 60s to me that has the implications that we're wrestling with today. And I think it zeroes in on extraterrestrials and other paranormal activities. I see it in a lot of other technologies where winners and losers were chosen, not based on the merit of competing in a market, but because the market had certain controls in it or certain powerful interests. Incredible breaking technology was extinguished, pushed off to the side. And I think culturally the same thing happened. I'll put that out as a point to all of you, and I'll ask you to react. Looking back, we have all different age groups here on the 60s. We only have about 4 or 5 minutes, so I'm going to ask you to each take a minute and react to that, and we'll go to break. Mary, I'll start with you.
Don't start with me on this one. I'll go second.
All right, second. Matt, how about you? 60s, come on. What do you think? Are we? Is it a culture clash or just a mix-up machine?
That's a good question. You mean the 60s being the decade of awakening, or give me a footnote there, Cobra.
Well, it's both. You had a lot of awakening, but you also had a lot of things that got clamped down. They just weren't going to discuss. You had all these different kinds of breakaway things that were occurring, but what we're talking about here with Von Braun and other people, a lot of things were completely shut down. And strangely to me, things that probably could have stood a little governmental, cultural, social control didn't receive it. They were just, it was released, and it seems like it was released almost for a destructive kind of way.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Well, the 60s are obviously the decade of the first space travel, human space travel, and the very first satellite, was that the 50s with Sputnik?
That was late 50s, that's correct.
Yeah. And so the 60s were that leap in technology, obviously. And so, yeah, I can see how there would be a clampdown, and that, again, I find that so offensive that people just, that's just the nature of animals, of human beings being in the animal kingdom. We're packing animals. And so those with the knowledge and the answers tend to hoard it. And it really insults me. I lose faith in humanity when I think of that. Incredible leaps in technology, and it's hoarded by the government.
My point is, I think a lot of people think that self-appointed betters think that we can't handle, so this is why they control it. Mary, I'm going to jump to you, and then we can get to Bill.
Yeah, we're talking about control and the powers that be, whatever name you want to put on them. They just want to be in control. So whatever it takes, that's what they do. And right now, it seems to benefit them to withhold this kind of information. The technology that exists today is incredible when it comes to space travel. We're already on Mars, and yet to the public, they have seminars like in Washington, D.C. every year about Mars and about speculating on the future. My own opinion is anything they're speculating on in the future is already in existence.
Well, hopefully one of our guests hasn't jumped on a motorcycle and left the show. Val, are you still with us, or did you depart?
Yeah, that was not me. Speaking on the 60s is a little harder for me for direct experience.
Do us a favor, take the historical back in the olden days kind of approach first, or you can work with us.
Well, no, I mean, I was born in 76, so I was not alive in the 60s, so I didn't get to experience it directly. However, my father was a product of the 60s, and, he and I had an ET encounter together when I was 4 years old. And when I revisited the experience through hypnosis, it was very different for each of us. I was 4, so I was open and excited and enjoying the experience. Sure. And my father was terrified. And looking back at it, my father was terrified because that's what he was taught. He was taught that these types of encounters are terrifying. It wasn't a terrifying encounter, but it was because that's what he learned. And I'm sure he learned that through media and books and, that sort of thing. So to me, that was very fascinating to see how different our perspectives were on the same exact encounter.
What did it look like for you?
It was a very organic, it's really, really challenging to describe. It was almost like a collective consciousness of multiple small organic entities coming together to form one thing, if that makes any sense.
It's not the normal definition or description that people usually give, but you weren't seeing grays or anything that people are constantly seeing in our media right now. And I do want to point out that not all contacts are grays. Going back to von Braun, he said he had seen real ETs that were from the star system of Aldebaran, and he said that they looked, for the most part, most of them were blonde and had blue eyes and were tall and looked quite human. So the idea that grays are the only ones we're having contact with is ridiculous. And maybe after your break, we can also talk about Bill Tompkins, which some of you guys may already know about.
Excellent. Well, that's, as Mary said, let's jump to break. This is Matt Malley's Military X-Files on the Distant Thunder Radio Network. Commander Cobra here with Val and Matt and our special guest, Mary Joyce. This is a special edition, special project, special mission version of Matt Malley's Military X-Files. We'll be right back after this break. Please stay with us.
Do you know where the world's most secret bases are located? Do you know what spooky action at a distance means? Is there a conspiracy by aliens to prevent us from conquering space? And where is the best place in the United States to see a real UFO? Find the answers to all these questions and more in Mack Malley's new book, Mack Malley's Haunted Universe. Visit places you never knew existed, the Hampton Tunnels of Tokyo, the UFO Trail in South America, Ong's Hat, and the very mysterious M Triangle. Mack Malley Haunted Universe contains hundreds of reports on ghosts, haunted planes and ships, weird celebrity deaths, mysterious sounds, and a breakdown of every monster in America, state by state. You've heard him talk about it on the radio. Now get all of Mack's paranormal research in one large volume. Mack Malley's Haunted Universe, with a foreword by the very famous Juan Juan. On sale now in your local bookstore or on Amazon.com.
Hello, this is Commander Cobra of Task Force Griffin, KJR Radio, KJRradio.com. And I need you to be a member like myself of the People's Mosquito and help rebuild and fly this great aircraft. I have 3 friends here today also who are going to ask you the same thing. Consider becoming a member of the People's Mosquito.
Hello, I'm John Lilly. I'm the Managing Director of the People's Mosquito, and I'd like you to donate or support our flying program.
Hi, I'm Ross Sharp. I'm the Director of Engineering of the People's Mosquito, and I'd like you to help us rebuild this magnificent aircraft.
Hi, I'm Bill Ramsey. I'm the Operations Director and Tame Pilot of the People's Mosquito. I need you to join us and become my wingman.
Join all of us and be a supporter of the People's Mosquito program. Thanks.
I was in the hospital with my son for 18 months.
When he got injured, I wasn't prepared, but I knew I had to be strong.
When I was told about John's injury, I was in complete shock. I just remember rushing into his room and giving him a big hug and letting him know I was there.
These veterans and families are just a few of the heroes we serve at Homes for Our Troops. For thousands of severely injured veterans, everyday life is filled with barriers.
It was really the little things throughout the house. Counters that you can't roll up to. How to drag my wheelchair down steps.
I want to help but he is so determined.
At Homes for Our Troops, we build specially adapted custom homes with features like wheelchair access, roll-in showers, and automatic door openers that allow them to function independently and focus on their recovery and family.
This house is freedom. It's hope. It's a new beginning.
This house has given me my family back.
To learn more, visit hfotusa.org.
UFOs are found in Renaissance art, on ancient coins, and etched on cave walls. They are even reported in the Bible. But more surprising is when UFOs are seen the most, in times of war. Through centuries, thousands of UFO sightings have been made by high-ranking officials, military pilots, and ordinary soldiers. Often, these fantastic appearances occur at the height of great battles. From World War I to D-Day, to Korea, Vietnam, and beyond, military investigators are baffled. Why do UFO sightings spike so drastically during wartime? Could it be mistaken aircraft, or is someone, or something, looking in on us? In UFOs in Wartime, What They Didn't Want You to Know, Matt Malley chronicles centuries of these incredible sightings and tries to solve the puzzle of why so many UFOs are seen while humanity is at war. Read about the scare ships, the ghost planes, and the ghost rockets, alien giants in the jungles of Vietnam, UFOs controlling our ICBM bases, dogfights with flying saucers during the Gulf War, and more. 300 pages of unbelievable stories, along with many startling photographs. That's UFOs in Wartime, What They Didn't Want You to Know, by Mack Malley. On sale at your local bookstore or on Amazon.com.
Welcome back to Matt Malley's Military X-Files, Commander Cobra, and a special mission edition for Matt Malley's Military X-Files on the Distant Thunder Radio Network. My guest tonight is Mary Joyce, longtime friend of Mac and myself, has been on this show a number of times and is an incredible researcher, investigator, and recorder, historian, I don't want to say pundit, but great commentator. And as we heard in the first half, Mary comes from a tradition of investigative journalism and following the standards of what I always associated with journalism, and it shows in her work. Also, we have Val and Matt with us as our co-host tonight. Mary, when we went to break, you were just getting ready to someone that you wanted to talk about. Please pick that up.
Yeah, there's a man, his name is, he just went by Bill Tompkins, and he worked truly at the top levels of NASA. He was considered a confidential advisor to the top two men, which would be Von Braun and I don't know how Kurt DeBus pronounced his name, but he was in charge of NASA in Florida. And this man came out with a book, and again, I'm going to promote somebody else's book. It's called Selected by Extraterrestrials by Bill Tompkins. And he said that there were aliens working at NASA at the highest level, and they were exquisitely beautiful Nordic ETs, but they were brilliant. And he said that they would give them ideas or just dump information into their heads. And that's why back, let's say in the 60s, there was such fast progress with space travel developments. After President Kennedy, declared we should, go to the moon and do all these different things, we made rapid progress. And he attributes the ETs for that happening so quickly.
Let me ask you, or make a point here and get your reaction. Over the years, and I have been fairly dismissive of this, that the Nazis had access to ET technology. We talk about this Nordic connection. I've always been, as I said, very dismissive of it. So I have 2 points that I want to make. I just want to get your reaction to this. Do you see any kind of connection to the wartime Nazi efforts that went on, and extraterrestrial specifically, or akin to the Nordic ET?
I know from what I have read and what I have heard that the ETs were involved with both the Germans and with the U.S. Whether they were the same group, I don't think so, because Tompkins talks about them being Nordic ETs. The ones involved with the Germans were supposedly from the planet Alderaan, and I'm not saying that right, I'm sure.
Right.
And they were not quite the same. And again, von Braun emphasizes that this planet is like a nursery for different species being developed. So, I think both countries were getting benefits from ETs. I also think that people like von Braun and like Bill Tompkins, they were such brilliant men and so interested in space and travel that they wanted to do that no matter which culture they were in. And I think that was the driving force behind these men. It wasn't the alliance with one particular government over the other.
Sure. No, I think that's a fair point. Matt, what do you think on that reaction to that comment that I made concerning we've talked about it when you've been on the show before with Mack about the Nazis having contact with ETs and a bridging activity with them. Your thought?
Yeah, I don't know much about. I haven't done research and found that little gold mine there yet, and I'm very interested in that. I know that Hitler was a huge enthusiast of occult practices and what do you call it, like metaphysical or just supernatural.
Yep.
He was seeking that, So anyway,
and in a very dark way too, I might add. Everything that I've read on the historical part of it was downright crazy stuff to me.
Yeah, gosh. Yeah. In a desperate attempt to make sure his country wins the war. So I wouldn't be surprised, at extraterrestrial interest as well.
And Val, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, I've heard the same things that that Matt just said, and about Hitler and all that, and none of that surprises me. I firmly believe that there are various ETs among us in governments, walking around, downtown Portsmouth. I think they're more prevalent than we realize. I do believe that. I've heard other people talk about, encountering somebody that just seemed a little bit not quite human. I've had similar experiences, so it doesn't surprise me at all.
Well, I just want to quickly note that for the Portsmouth Chamber of Commerce, if there's a nice uptick in tourism because of Val stating that we have ETs walking amongst us in Portsmouth, I know I have experienced some ETs in a couple of the brew pubs in Portsmouth, so I think that we're probably tracking on the right direction. All right, here's another question I want to pose, starting with Mary, and get a reaction of our co-hosts. Mary, again, this is another one of these areas where you are very, you're straight up on this. You don't really throw any spin to it. No doubt in your mind that we have activity in Antarctica. I've been there 3 times. I've seen some incredible things there. I have seen none of the things. And I was at one of the areas where we were supposed to have fought a rather large battle against, again, Nazis in league with incredible technology. Some of it obviously seems to be either re-engineered or sponsored engineered from extraterrestrial technology. So we have that. We have this Antarctica situation. We have this situation where we think we have ETs on many sides of it going on. We can talk a little bit about Antarctica. That would be great. But I also want to ask, how do you think we can keep this a secret? I have a reply to this if the question was posed to me. But how do you think we could have possibly kept this a secret all these years to this level of it, that Mr. McClellan and others like him, he kept his job for a number of years before he was forced out. Obviously, whoever was providing him cover or sponsorship or whatever was no longer there. I would probably seem from what we discussed tonight, that was probably von Braun that gave him that kind of edge or protective cover. But what's your thoughts? How are we keeping these things from leaking out?
I think it's simply by threatening people. We're either going to take all your benefits away, you're going to lose your job. If they get real serious about it, they will threaten people's lives. Clark was afraid that he might get snuffed out, and other people have been afraid that they, might be snuffed out. I did a story many years ago about, I did an interview with the wife of a man who designed like the security for Area 51. He designed the security for Air Force One. Very, very knowledgeable person. And in my interview with her, she felt very strongly that he had been killed. And they can be real clean about wiping somebody out. There's ways to essentially start a heart attack from a distance. So, I think there's some really scary things. President, I'm going blank, Carter, who is another person I've actually met in person.
Right. Yeah.
He
commended you on the study that you did on Jesus.
He did. You've got a good memory. That was a long time ago. But he actually had seen a UFO. He went public about it. He was going to present all this information to the public about this reality. And in my own opinion, this is not a quote from him, but when I put the pieces together, I think that not only he was threatened, but I think his family is threatened or was threatened. And because, the whole family had to know what he saw, and the whole family won't talk about it. So it's amazing, threaten somebody, you're going to take their life away, and that shuts up most people.
I think it's a very fair, very astute answer. Val, what do you think?
Yeah, I have to agree completely with what she said. We know how easily people can be controlled by fear, and threats are a great way to keep people silent. And I think that's why having these conversations on small scales is helpful to get people talking about it. I think if the masses are in agreement that, this is all a possibility, then the threat isn't as threatening anymore. We kind of dilute that through coming together as a group.
I personally think that shows like yours, websites like mine, all these grassroots efforts to get the information out are the methods through which this information will spread among the general public. People who are sitting around waiting for the government to just make this great revelation, I think, are totally out of touch with the reality of how the government operates. So
absolutely, perfectly
all
stated.
of us little people who are doing our little websites and podcasts and radio shows, we are creating a quiet groundswell of information that is becoming increasingly difficult to dismiss.
And there's a point I want to jump on very quickly, just add on to. This is the reason I don't want to be misunderstood. I would never reveal secrets or things that I was involved in that could possibly cause harm to the people that are still engaged in activities in my realm, providing security to the nation, to the people of this nation. So, but that kind of approach to me falls under this thing that's what used to be a very popular term. It's alternative media. And the interesting part about it is that we are functioning under almost Orwellian kind of think and actions that go on. The very medium by which we are speaking and people seeking it out is very much what Matt was referring to before. The frustration, the anger of not being able to, judge for yourself or have the information go forward. No one's forced to look at this. If you don't care about this and you're happy to go about your life doing whatever it is, that's fantastic. Just as I think it's just as fantastic if you want to know all these things. So you're right. Mary. A website like yourselves, Mack's show, which is, grown in leaps and bounds because we find folks like you. We talk about that. Obviously, when Mack's at the helm, it has a lot more style and a lot more pizzazz, but we all come to the same point all the time. If we don't like something, we call it out and we say it for what it is. And that is the only way we're going to be able to draw the conclusion where we're at. Matt, I don't want to run over asking you your thoughts on all this.
Yeah, this is really interesting to me. In fact, I wonder if my heart is more in social psychology than anything else, because
you're a musician, so I think that there is I don't mean that to sound flippant when I say that, but it doesn't surprise me that you would have that kind of social context or compact with people. Yeah.
The study of people in groups, behavioral patterns in groups, because Mary was touching on that, and every time I just get I'll feel triggered at the thought of control, those in control, those who need to retain control. And I think, what a bunch of apes we are, as a species, that there has to be a little group that needs to control. And then I wonder, where's the whistleblower in that group? And then you think, well, maybe there's a littler group that's controlling him, and they're saying, you better keep quiet or you'll lose your job. Well, then where's the whistleblower in the littler group? Where's the whistleblower? And I'm waiting I want the Edward Snowden to show up, who knows everything that's going on, and say, I can't come to America anymore, but here's everything, everybody. I want that guy.
Let me give you a couple of things. Mary, you touched upon this. There's no doubt how you phrased it. To me, it seems very easy to keep secrets secret, especially when you're going to intimidate people. And if you don't really want to intimidate by taking someone's life, the easiest way to me is that you place the threat upon families, offspring. Once you have children, and when you have extended family, you really feel bound to not let harm come upon them. So to me, it's not all that difficult to go forward. And I think when things do slip out, we have now an apparatus that is around it where everything has been weaponized in every aspect of language, of how we imagery. Everything is on that. So if someone came out with rock solid proof, I can guarantee you within 30 minutes, if it's still on the World Wide Web, there's going to be rock solid proof that this person is a complete nut. And if they're not able to come up with that, they're going to show you something that discredits them so horribly, they're either going to withdraw it or they'll just outright suppress it. That's the interesting place I think we're at right now. You can ultimately suppress anyone or anything, and most people aren't all that upset about it. Me, I'm spitting nails, aggravated about it. Your thoughts, ladies? I'll start with you, Mary.
There's a book series. It's called Palmdale. At the moment, I can't remember the man's name, but he's like a retiree who worked at Area 51.
Yeah, Lockheed Palmdale.
And he talked about two groups of people who were involved with disinformation. And the first group would come up with all sorts of, contrived stories and stuff to explain away things. Like if everybody saw a UFO, they would come up with stories so that it wouldn't be believed. Then there was a group that would jump in if the first group didn't have success. And that group were, they were the tough guys. And that included the Men in Black. And some people think the Men in Black might be some kind of alien oddity. According to this man and other sources too, they are human beings, and their job is to intimidate people if there's no other way to explain away a situation.
All right, I had to grab my Kindle because I was pretty sure it was in there. I believe that you were referring to the Palmdale Files, and it's by Anderson and Lyons, if I've got the right one, if I pulled it up on my screen here.
I wish I could.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's the one you're talking about.
Okay.
They span a lot of actual activities, things around like the U2 and other activities, and then they go into everything, all the different things that are forgotten and buried. So for folks that are interested, a third set of books. Val, give me your read on what I have come back, that for the age that we live in, we're now almost in a perfect, it's almost a perfect square. If you did have the evidence, if you do have the proof, if it's not supportive to whatever the initiative is of those that are in control or trying to maintain control or gather more power, if they can't out-note, just blanket it out, you're going to be completely shredded in every applicable way to make it sound like you're completely off your rocker.
Yeah, I think a lot of people have that fear. I mentioned that I worked for many years with a group here in New Hampshire that had multiple events around, UFOs. We had social events and we had support groups. And first of all, I want to let Mary know that, your website came up often, your books came up often. So, the discussions were being had, and your information certainly helped those conversations. And, we would have people come in afraid to talk about their experiences because they were afraid of ridicule. They were afraid of their boss finding out. I've been through it. As a single mother, I was afraid my ex-husband would use something against me. But we have to be brave and, having the conversations and appreciating when people are brave enough to push through the fear and talk about it anyway. The more we can do that, the more we will overcome these obstacles. I think we just need more people to come together and be brave and support each other when somebody is brave, and not let these potential discreditations, I don't think that's the right word.
Hey, we're going to let it fly because it sounded really good.
Thank you. But I think if we can come together as a group and support these people, I think that will make a huge difference. I think that's the only way to do it.
Mary, your reaction to that?
I agree with that. And the other thing is that these people who get to be close to exiting the planet many times will come forth and they have great credibility and they will spill some of the beans. And that happens because many of these people, they are just weighted down with the burden of knowing the truth of something, right, and they want to get it out. So it's like with Clark's book. He truly tried to get it out earlier, but right, after he died, it did come out, and it's brand new, and it just came out on the 17th of May. So it's not as organized as I wish it could be, because the editor and me would love to really organize it in a different fashion. But he essentially was turning over his papers to this man simply to get them published. And don't think it's unreadable, because it's not. But I'm.
Oh no, I've read enough of your work, and I understand that it's hard for you not to line things up in the logical way that you present stuff. I think that Mr. McClellan and I probably are very much alike. I'm sure when I finally get to read it, I'll be comfortable with it, because it seems to me that it's a file and it's a journal, and it's compiled in that, and it may have its own sense of.
And read it the way I did. I read it by jumping around and reading the stuff I was most interested in first. And then I would just yellow mark. I destroy books. Would yellow marker the index, so that I could find out the stuff I really wanted to know first, and it makes it much more interesting that way.
Well, good tip, hint, Matt.
Yeah.
Give me your closest run to having an experience that falls in the category of paranormal, because I suspect that you're a lot like me. Really would like to have the experiences that Mary and Val have had. I've had some interesting ones myself, but nothing to me in that classical sense. And I think that's why I always use the expression, God's peace, because it surpasses all knowledge and understanding. Because I think once you are able to let stuff like that go and just accept all the really cool things around it, it lets you look at things that you're interested in. Have you ever really had anything that you just has done it, or are you just like me? Everything you see around is interesting, and some is just a little bit more interesting than others.
Well, you know what, Cobra, and tell me if I break up at all here, because I had a definite experience, and I'm like you. I'm an aviation enthusiast. I know a lot about airplanes, about flying, and how airplanes work, and how flying objects work in general. But quickly, I'll just tell you, I was driving north. This is about 7 or 8 years ago. I was driving up to the Bay Area, San Francisco Bay Area, on the 101 freeway, and I was near San Jose. And this wasn't at twilight, right at the time that evening is starting, but there's still light in the sky. And a meteor flew over northbound over the freeway that was so large it was one of those where you can see smoke on it. And so I knew what it was, and the traffic actually slowed because it was so obvious. It was right in front of us, as if we had front row seats to this event. All the cars slowed down, and now I'm scanning the sky because of what just happened. And what I saw to my left, so the northwest, were two lights that looked like the ends of the wings of a very large airplane. They were far in the distance, and there were two lights, and they started rolling over each other clockwise. And I thought to myself, that's a big airplane to be doing a roll like that. And they rolled, and then they separated and went up into the sky, and a few stars were visible, and these 2 points of light sat perfectly still like stars. And so I was dying for a telescope, because I knew that those 2 points of light that just separated and flew on their own to the sky and became totally stationary were not stars, but they looked just like them. Right. And that was right after a meteor. And the timing of it was just incredible. So I'm here to tell you, I really had a full-on experience.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Well, folks, we're rapidly approaching the end here. Obviously, we can go on. I want to give a last round to both Val and Mary. I do want to add, we talked about a number of books, but I always like to remind listeners, if they have not grabbed Mack's books, in particular, he's a very prolific writer, but Beyond Area 51 and UFOs in Wartime, What They Do Not Want You to Know, both by Matt Malley. I think if you're interested in what's coming out with the report from the government that just dropped a little while ago, those are two excellent books to read. Mack really lays out I think a kind of a critical analysis of a lot of information, things that just do not add up, things that do not square when you look at it. And I think, Mary, that's something that you've spent a lot of your time with as well, just pointing out and developed a position with a number of people that you're a trusted person to come to and talk to.
You got to be honest, and you got to keep your mouth shut when people tell you their secrets, and only let them out when they're okay. In fact, anything I post on the website, skyshipsovercashers.com, I run the story by the person before I post it. So it's not like a newspaper in that respect, right, because newspaper people can just post it and it may not be the way you want it to be.
Right, and just walk away and leave you holding the pieces. That's Skyships Over Cashers, and it's spelled like cashiers. And I tell you, just put Mary Joyce UFO, Mary Joyce ET, Mary Joyce Paranormal into any one of your major search engines. You can reach out, or you can go to Commander Cobra DTOM at protonmail.com, and I'll be more than happy to link up anybody who would like to talk with Mary through her website. Val, I'm going to leave it with you. We're down to our last couple of minutes. Give us the read on this part of the show, if you don't mind.
It's fascinating to feel the energy of people who believe in what they're talking about, and the intent behind it is to spread knowledge, and it's a really good feeling. It's a really good feeling. We need more of this.
Well, thank you, Val, and not to sound too corny here, but the truth is out there. A famous line from the X-Files, which kind of matches Matt Malley's X-Files. And folks, it's been a great, fast first hour. Mary Joyce, skyshipsovercashers.com, her website. Val Lofaso with us, and Matt Malley with us as the co-host. We're going to try to reach out through space and time. Switchblade Steve Ward next. And we look forward to seeing you on the other side of the divide on this show, and talking to all of you and engaging with all of you when Mack is back at the helm here very soon. Thank you very much from Commander Cobra on this block of Matt Malley's Military X-Files on the Distant Thunder Radio Network.
Do you know where the world's most secret bases are located? Do you know what spooky action at a distance means? Is there a conspiracy by aliens to prevent us from conquering space? And where is the best place in the United States to see a real UFO? Find the answers to all these questions and more in Mack Malley's new book, Mack Malley's Haunted Universe. Visit places you never knew existed, the Hampton Tunnels of Tokyo, the UFO Trail in South America, Ong's Hat, and the very mysterious M Triangle. Mack Malley Haunted Universe contains hundreds of reports on ghosts, haunted planes and ships, weird celebrity deaths, mysterious sounds, and a breakdown of every monster in America, state by state. You've heard him talk about it on the radio. Now get all of Mack's paranormal research in one large volume, Mack Malley's Haunted Universe, with a foreword by the very famous Juan Juan. On sale now in your local bookstore or on Amazon.com.
Hello, this is Commander Cobra of Task Force Griffin, KJR Radio, KJRradio.com. And I need you to be a member like myself of the People's Mosquito and help rebuild and fly this great aircraft. I have 3 friends here today also who are going to ask you the same thing. Consider becoming a member of the People's Mosquito.
Hello, I'm John Lilly. I'm the Managing Director of the People's Mosquito, and I'd like you to donate or support our flying program.
Hi, I'm Ross Sharp. I'm the Director of Engineering of the People's Mosquito, and I'd like you to help us rebuild this magnificent aircraft.
Hi, I'm Bill Ramsey. I'm the Operations Director and Tame Pilot of the People's Mosquito. I need you to join us and become my wingman.
Join all of us and be a supporter of the People's Mosquito program. Thanks.
I was in the hospital with my son for 18 months.
When he got injured, I wasn't prepared, but I knew I had to be strong.
When I was told about John's injury, I was in complete shock. I just remember rushing into his room and giving him a big hug and letting him know I was there.
These veterans and families are just a few of the heroes we serve at Homes for Our Troops. For thousands of severely injured veterans, everyday life is filled with barriers.
It was really the little things throughout the house. Counters that you can't roll up to. I had to drag my wheelchair down steps.
I want to help, but he is so determined.
At Homes for Our Troops, we build specially adapted custom homes with features like wheelchair access, roll-in showers, and automatic door openers that allow them to function independently and focus on their recovery and family.
This house is freedom. It's hope. It's a new beginning.
This house has given me my family back.
To learn more, visit hfotusa.org.
UFOs are found in Renaissance art, on ancient coins, and etched on cave walls. They are even reported in the Bible. But more surprising is when UFOs are seen the most, in times of war. Through centuries, thousands of UFO sightings have been made by high-ranking officials, military pilots, and ordinary soldiers. Often, these fantastic appearances occur at the height of great battles. From World War I to D-Day to Korea, Vietnam, and beyond, military investigators are baffled. Why do UFO sightings spike so drastically during wartime? Could it be mistaken aircraft, or is someone, or something, looking in on us? In UFOs in Wartime, What They Didn't Want You to Know, Mack Malley chronicles centuries of these incredible sightings and tries to solve the puzzle of why so many UFOs are seen while humanity is at war. Read about the scare ships, the ghost planes, and the ghost rockets, alien giants in the jungles of Vietnam, UFOs controlling our ICBM bases, dogfights with flying saucers during the Gulf War, and more. 300 pages of unbelievable stories, along with many startling photographs. That's UFOs in Wartime, What They Didn't Want You to Know, by Matt Malley. On sale at your local bookstore or on Amazon.com.
Welcome to Matt Malley's Military X-Files on the Distant Thunder Radio Network. This is the second half of the Double Tap, the yo-yo off the tanker show that we've been talking about tonight. This hour, we're together with Steve Ward, otherwise known as Switch, or Switchblade to everyone in the Matt Malley Military X-Files universe. He is truly tonight our national correspondent field reporter. He is doing a fringe report, a field fringe report. I'll let him describe where he's at. But as I said in the first part, I just always want to say thank you to the magic of Bill Skywatcher producing and making the magic work on this show. We have had to do this show in parts because everyone is greatly and widely dispersed. Mac, Wan, and Raven are off on secret missions. And we have Switch on a mission that's not so secret that he'll describe, that we're working through. So it's been a rather busy 48 to 72 hours getting everyone together, getting it worked up. And as always, Skywatcher always on the wing there, making sure that we can somehow pull it all together. Switch, it's good to hear your voice. I'm ghosting here for Mac, or guesting, depending on how you want to say it. Why don't you tell everyone where you're at and where this fringe field report's coming from?
Well, I am in Point Pleasant, West Virginia, which, of course, we have talked about numerous times on the show. This is the lair of the Mothman that was seen predominantly over about a year's time, about 13 months, really, but not exclusively the 13 months, from November 15th, 1966 to December 15th, 1967. And, of course, the Mothman was that winged creature or apparition, depending on your viewpoint, that stood about 6 or 7 feet tall, had piercing red glowing eyes, about a 10-foot wingspan, roughly the shape of a man, and proceeded to scare the hell out of a lot of people. Chased cars up and down Route 62, and was seen originally in the TNT area, which also we've talked a great deal about. The TNT area is about 6 or 7 miles north of here. I was out there last night. I'll talk about that in a minute, but I really want to describe the surroundings here. I'm just I'm in the just off from the downtown area of Point Pleasant, and I'm overlooking the Ohio River. I'm looking east across the Ohio, and if I look south, I can see what they call the Memorial Silver Bridge. If I look up north, you see the train bridge. Now, the original Silver Bridge, paralleled, was right next to the train bridge.
Correct.
And came right off of 6th Street. And that's the one that collapsed back in December 15th of 1967. And like I say, the old train bridge still stands there. But the Silver Bridge is, if you go down to where it stood, there's a little memorial, a little kind of a squared off memorial that describes what happened, and that 46 people lost their lives that night. Now there's what cuts that off from the 6th Street now is this very long flood wall that goes up and down this part of the Ohio. And it's the flood wall itself is phenomenal because a gentleman named Charles Humphrey, who was one of the town fathers here. He's been responsible for building this beautiful amphitheater that I'm kind of sitting on top of right now that goes down to the water. They have performances here. They have rock groups and all kinds of music. They have the Miss Mothman pageant there as well. It's just very, very scenic. But if you look behind me, you'll see this incredible flood wall, and each section has paintings out of history, colonial times, the Battle of Point Pleasant, which goes back. I can't give you the exact year. I'm a little rusty on the specific history, but back in those days is when Chief Cornstalk, who was a peacemaker, was murdered, and some people claimed that he had uttered a curse on the area, which created the Mothman phenomena and the strange lights and so forth. It turns out to be absolute nonsense, and that's another story we can pursue. But now, if you go up through the flood wall...
I want to throw this in. I just made a quick note, because you are a subject matter expert and quite a well-known personality in Point Pleasant concerning the Mothman activities and festivities. You've been there for years. You've given a number of talks on it. Have you? I already know this is going to come up when Mack reviews the show. Have you been able to work a judgeship for Mack and Wan in the Miss Mothman beauty pageant?
I would say there are a lot of things that are unlikely to happen that would probably happen first before that would occur.
That's probably one of the most congressional pathways to a no that I've heard in a long time. Please continue, sir. I wanted to ask.
But I will be honest, I haven't really pursued that because, I don't want to be blacklisted myself. So, I just don't see it happening. But we would welcome the entire Mack Maloney crew down here at some point of the Mothman Festival, or even just a road trip to Point Pleasant, because there's so much to see and do, even without the activity of the festival.
Well, it has been talked about, and we may be at the right alignment of the celestial bodies of our solar system for this to occur.
Now, if I turn and go to the east, and I go through the flood wall opening, you'll go right into downtown Point Pleasant. You'll pass the historic Low Hotel, which is a place that John Keel stayed at for a while when he was down here. Now, he also stayed at a more, in quotes, modern motel, which isn't so modern anymore, in Gallipolis. Now, Gallipolis, Ohio, is on the other side of the Silver Bridge, just to kind of get your geography all set, because the Ohio is splitting West Virginia, and the Ohio River is splitting West Virginia and the state of Ohio. So if you go back through the flood wall, you'll go right into downtown Point Pleasant. If you keep walking straight back, you're going to hit the majestic Mothman statue, which was created by Bob Roach. Bob Roach is no longer with us, but he also has created some other historic figures, other statues, down along the top of the flood wall here. I mean, the top of the amphitheater, namely Chief Cornstalk himself. And another figure out of history, I think they called her Mad Ann Bailey. And I don't think I can give you a good summary of Mad Ann Bailey, but I think just the name itself conjures up visions. So anyway, you go in toward the Mothman statue, you look off to your left a little bit, and there's the world's only Mothman Museum. And it was Jeff Wamsley and Carolyn Harris that started the Mothman Festival back about 2001. And Carolyn, unfortunately, is no longer with us for the last few years, but she was a force to be dealt with. She actually lost her son on the bridge collapse that night. He was about 6 years old, and he was crossing the bridge with her ex-husband. And but nevertheless, she did whatever she could to help revive the town that was really having trouble financially. Sure. And so she and Jeff Wamsley joined forces, and they started this Mothman Festival, which went from very humble beginnings to this huge, 10,000, 12,000 people. And just as an aside, we went out to the TNT area last night, and usually you go out there by yourself in this time of year, but there were a number of people out there. It was like being at the Mothman Festival with all the people out there checking out, going off Potters Creek Road and checking out Eagle Road number 7, which is the one that people check out the most. And I'm thinking, good Lord, if this is happening now, the festival, and especially after not having one last year, and we'll get more to the festival in a moment. But anyway, the Mothman, I'm getting sidetracked again. The Mothman Museum was founded by Jeff Wamsley. And he has actually several other stores up and down Main Street that cover all kinds of pop culture stuff. And he's got 2 other stores. His daughter, Ashley, has a store called Counterpoint, with the goods that are made by locals here. I mean, it's just this one family has done so much to revive this town. And in the tradition of Carolyn Harris, which she owned Harris's Steakhouse, otherwise known as the Mothman Diner. And she was, someone that fed people that didn't have any money. I mean, she was just one of those people you read about in storybooks. Just an amazing lady. Anyway, the museum is so well done. There's no halfway measures. There's nothing cheap about the merchandise. And there's certainly no shame in buying a phenomenal Mothman T-shirt. They have a huge variety. They've got coffee mugs. They've got great books. They've got memorabilia from the film, The Mothman Prophecies. They have the original newspaper articles and some of the original when the two couples were chased down Route 62 on November 15th, 1966. They have the police reports here. Jeff has just accumulated all kinds of stuff. Plus, he has a couple of great books out, which cover a lot of this. Mothman, The Facts Behind the Legend, The Truth Behind the Legend, and Mothman Behind the Red Eyes. And it reprints a lot of this stuff that is just, lost to history and lost to time. So it's just and right now, it's while it's in the 80s, I've got a nice breeze coming off the Ohio. I'm sitting, there's a lot of trees that go up and down on the top of this amphitheater. And so I'm in the shade and very comfortable. And I just wish that people could, what they have to do, they have to get online and look at some of the pictures in the area. I mean, just looking across to Ohio and looking up and down the river. And every once in a while, you'll see these huge barges come by, up and down the Ohio. So, and if you go down a little bit to the south, you'll come to the confluence of two rivers. The Kanawha River is also there. And there's quite a bit of paranormal lore about what happens with the confluence of two rivers. And it may be true with everything that has happened here. And the monument to Chief Cornstalk is down there. And there's just so much history here. The geography is phenomenal. And then there's call it folklore, call it history of the Mothman and the strange sightings that people saw and all the experiences. It's just absolutely phenomenal. And definitely you need to put it on your bucket list and get it up toward the top.
Switch, for everyone who I'm sure there's very few people listening that don't have at least a pretty good understanding of Mothman. Dive in a little bit. You have had some experiences while you've been there. You've been there a number of times over the years. As I said, you've moderated talks, you've given talks. A lot of the folks that have really created the festival and created the tabulation, the record of history there. Explain to everybody some of the stuff that's gone on for you personally while you've been there.
Well, just a little bit. As I've told people time and time again, I'm not an experiencer, but one night I decided that I was going to go into the TNT area alone. Now, the TNT area was established during, it's called the McClintock Wildlife Area. Something like, thousands of acres of land that's just public land now.
I guess you should explain to the uninitiated Switch why it's called the TNT area, so that they understand. I'm just on the verge, because if you go back to the 40s, and you should check out again the old photographs, the old black and white photographs, because it was quite a complex with all kinds of buildings and so forth. It's where they actually made explosives for the World War II effort, and they built about 100 of these concrete bunkers. We call them igloos. And you can still get in a lot of them. Some of them were sold to private interests, but that's where they stored the munitions. And also they designed it so that they had foliage and stuff growing on the bunkers, so that if God forbid the Nazis made it inland and flew over, they would see it looked like just terrain, so they wouldn't see that it was a group of buildings that were housing anything. And it's a spooky area in the daytime, and at night it's even spookier. And back in the 60s, it had been abandoned for a long time. So it's been a creepy area for decades. And why some Hollywood movie producer or even independent movie producers aren't out here exploiting this for some kind of a backdrop of a film, I don't know. But there's one particular, if you go north on Route 62, this is the same road that the Scarberries and the Mallets were chased by this creature, the Mothman, back on November 15th, 1966. And they were out by where the old power plant used to stand. And that's been torn down. That was torn down in the 90s. But I did visit it back in 1977 after I had read the book, The Mothman Prophecies by John Keel.
you read a book that you're fascinated by, and you have to see the area. So I was able to get into the old ruin before they tore it down. But I got sidetracked again, because one night several years ago, I think it was, one of these igloos blew up back in 2011, and somebody had stored something in there they weren't supposed to. It was privately owned, and I was down there a week later. It blew its top off and blew the metal doors out, and we went back there last night, and it looks like, if anybody can remember the original Time Machine film, Rod Taylor goes to he sees this old ancient dome which is kind of broken down, right, and there's all kinds of stuff growing on it. That's kind of what it looks like now. I mean, it's really the
I believe that was one of the stories of the Illustrated Man on that film adaptation of the book.
Oh, it could be. But it's really the foliage, the forest has really taken it over. But it was that weekend that my friends went back home, and I thought, I want to see what it would be like just to go out to the TNT area alone one night. Now, the locals come out here all the time. They camp, they hunt, and so forth. They fish, and it's not a big deal. But I hadn't done that before, so I went out. And I went, the Potter's Creek Road, took Igloo Road number 7. I even went in one of the igloos, and I had my recorder going, and I looked kind of like a paranormal investigator, just in case I captured something. And then I drove back. Well, when I was driving back, I experienced a couple flashes of light, and I don't know what it was, but I didn't have the presence of mind to think, where in the road was this, so I can come back tomorrow and see if I can figure out what happened. And when I got back to a couple things happened when I got back to my hotel room across the river in Gallipolis. The first thing I did is look at the clock, because I wondered, did I have any missing time? And I'm actually a little confused about that. I at first I thought no, and then I thought, well, maybe. You see, I didn't write anything down, and I kind of beat myself up for that for a while, except I've heard other people that have had other experiences were weirder than mine, that didn't have the presence of mind or had almost amnesia about it, where they didn't do what they should have done to try and figure out what was going on. Now, I don't know if I lost any time or not, but here's the weird part. I opened the door to my room, the TV set turned on, and started flipping through channels all by itself. Yeah, and I thought, no, this doesn't happen to me. All right, this does not happen to me. So I did what any intrepid paranormal investigator would do. I unplugged the television set and went to bed. Okay, now there's a postscript to this.
There's a level of dedication there, Switch.
Yes. Well, again, I did it all wrong. So the next time I have a possessed television set, I'm going to take photographs and take notes. But a year later, almost exactly a year later, I'm there in the room next to that room. And with a couple of friends, we're crammed in there trying to save some money. And that night, the TV set turned on by itself. Same old style TV set. And thought, well, that's weird. So we did experiments, what I should have done before with the remote, to see if we could make it come on. Maybe it's a stray signal. We don't know. The next day, one of the guys and I came in the room. The TV set turned on by itself and flipped through a couple stations. But okay. All right, then a few years later, at the Mothman Festival, the next room over, which is a corner room, and it's a bigger room, and two couples were in there, they had a newer television set, and they were having trouble with the volume. The volume kept going down, they kept turning it up, and then all of a sudden it would blast, and they'd turn it down again and go through the cycle. Then all of a sudden, somebody had some kind of a beverage can or whatever on the end table, and it flew off the end table. So I don't know how to explain what happened there. If something followed me back that night from the TNT area, and it's an ancient Native American burial ground that goes way back. If somebody came back with me, fortunately, they're still flipping channels and residing in the motel and did not follow me home.
Now, do you have to pay for that? I mean, is that something that you have to, declare a checkout?
Mum's the word. Now, it's either in this area, it would probably increase their, they would probably knock up the value of the room.
That's it. I would think the value of the room would go up for paranormal experience seeking folks. It
now,
could just
have
be YouTube.
one other.
It could just be YouTube as well.
It might be because
you might be the antenna, that focuses the energy.
Except that I was only in 2 of the rooms. I wasn't in the 3rd room, so maybe
your range is extending. Maybe you're rebroadcasting and you have a wider range now.
I don't know. There's only one other kind of a minor experience, and it was about 2012. A group of us were down on the Ohio River near where the Silver Bridge used to stand. And we were some of the people there were very successful at getting EVPs. And, of course, those are the voices imprinted on tapes. And they were very, very respectful because of the area, because of those that had passed years before on the bridge. And they were asking questions and so forth. And one of the ladies, in fact, it was our own Emily Mittermeier, had set up a flashlight. You know how they do it on TV where the flashlight's almost on, but it's not quite on. Okay. All of a sudden, this thing went off by itself. And we thought, well, that's interesting. So we, and then it went off. And then we were stamping our feet to see if the vibration would knock it, would make it go. And so a little bit later, I thought, well, I've seen enough of these TV shows. I know what to do. And I said, okay, if there's anybody here, would you please turn the flashlight on at the count of 3? I counted down 3. The flashlight went on for 3 beats and then went off. And I said, can I say holy expletive now? And everybody laughed. And they had a recorder going. Later on, a friend of mine checked out the tape, and he said he's not positive, and it was certainly not a Class A EVP, but he thinks he may have heard a voice after I said, can I say holy expletive now? The voice say, little baby. So I might have been demeaned by one of the inhabitants of the netherworld at that same time. So, and then the last thing I did was a little bit later, I thought, well, let's see if lightning strikes twice. So I said, again, if there's anybody here, would you turn the flashlight on to the count of 3? And I counted down, and then 3 beats, nothing. Flashlight came on for 3 beats, and then went off. Now, certainly, this could all be a coincidence. And again, this stuff doesn't happen to me. So, the audience can decide what happened there.
Except when it does.
Yes. Yeah. So, but I have been with people out in the TNT area that were having experiences, becoming nauseous. A couple ladies I was out with one time were experiencing, they thought, some kind of a shadow person. And they were comparing, we compared notes. I mean, they were seeing the same thing, reporting it without talking to each other. A few years ago, I was out with a group, and they were looking behind them, and they could see some like shadowy figures that were changing shape behind them. I didn't see anything. So it's people experience a lot of things out there. They get classic EVPs. They get they see shadow people and so forth. Not too much in the way of Mothman sightings these days, but it's an intriguing area. And then to lead into the Mothman Festival on Saturday night, there's 3 of us that do a tour. And one of them is Jeff Wamsley, the curator of the Mothman Museum. The other one is Brittany Sayre. She was on my show, The High Strangeness Factor, last year. And we saw her last night. We went out, all of us together, to the TNT area. And she was a former Miss Mothman, and she's actually won several pageants. And she's quite a force in the community. And she's one of the presenters on. It's kind of like an old-fashioned hayride. And Jeff has a few, even I helped set up a few, creepy crawlies in the TNT area to make it a little bit like a Halloween setup. But the high point is when John and Tim Frick fly the Mothman. And it's great because there's these old structures are still there. If you look at the old photographs, you'll see where the train cars came underneath and loaded and unloaded their material, whether it be TNT or the stuff to make the explosives. And those buildings are still there, all overgrown and everything. I just wish people could see. You need to go online and check images of this place, because it's a perfect setting for any kind of a hayride. And of course, I give them a little bit of history, and we have a lot of fun, a lot of stale jokes, but they're not too stale because every time the ride is different. And so not everybody, there's one couple that comes every year, and they listen to the same thing, but it must be entertaining enough to come every year. But it's just an absolute blast, and everybody was so disappointed that it didn't happen last year.
Now, I have to throw in here really quickly that Mack would have jumped on this in a big way, so I feel obliged to, as I'm taking the helm here for him. When you said that you were out with two women and you made them nauseous, I believe you would have got the rim shot sound effects there. So the ode to Mack. I want to make sure that we make note of that. Well, you're going to go in. You guys speak some time on the festival here. Give me it. To me, there's the right kind of mix here of serious contemplation, even investigation of what happened with Mothman and all the other phenomena that surround this. This is, to me, another one of those almost near perfect universal theory of paranormal that we always talk about. That Mack started us, developing the working theory, because a lot of other things happen around it. And there's also what I think is appropriate fun that goes along with it. I mean, I think that there's just downright celebration, people having a good time around this. So it spans, it's got a nice arc of all the activities there. And as you said, there's good things to see there at the museum. It's well done. It's focused, but it also has some entertainment value, some interest developing part of it. And I think that that's something that's really, the last couple of decades, would you say, is really what has come into focus?
Yes. It started, I don't even know, I didn't start going until 2006. And it was pretty well attended back then, but it's really, really grown since then. I also want to say that on Saturday and Sunday at the Old Theater, they have speakers all day. And they cover everything, not just the Mothman, but Bigfoot, UFOs, and big names, too. I know that Nick Redfern is going to be here this year, and Ken Gerhardt, a cryptozoologist. And so they really, it really does have a wide array of speakers. I'm not, as far as I know, I will not be speaking this year, but I have about 3 different times. And so you just get everything. And, of course, you have the standard vendor stuff up and down the street. Any food you can think of, including Mothman pancakes. And they have stuff for the kids. They have the bouncy thing you can jump up and down, and and a skyline. The kids can go down. Oh, and they even have a full size.
I heard that you're kind of the king of the bouncy castle, though. Is that true?
No, it's that my knee will not allow me to these days. As much as I'd love to get in there. That's just a vicious rumor that Mack has been spreading about that you are. Yeah, that many vicious rumors. But if you remember the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man from Ghostbusters.
Yes.
Well, they have a full-size one in a vacant lot there. Plus, they have plenty of people doing the cosplay of Ghostbusters. They just have and every kind of. Oh, and then. If you that's up and down Main Street, but the street that crosses it, that empties into the past the flood wall, and then goes up past the Mothman statue, that's where most of the you'll find most of the speakers and their tables, and there's plenty of vendors with books and T-shirts, and you can't help but get the Mothman fever, and you want to buy everything that has Mothman on it. And I've accumulated quite a bit over the years.
Well, as any good investigator, you're dedicated to your research, and you are a font of knowledge, as we have recognized here on Matt Malley's Military X-Files in the past. And obviously, Mothman is one of the areas that you truly are an SME, the subject matter expert. Not just for our show, but for a number of other occasions that have gone on. What else are you cooking up?
Are you talking about this weekend or?
Yeah, the weekend, and what's the next parts and pieces.
Okay, well let me. I want to give a shout out to Bill and Jackie Kuselis and Amanda Raber. They're part of the Phenomenology Research Associates, and they're going to be down here for a week. And they have made Bill has a PhD in psychology, and his specialty is trauma. And he's lined up several people that he's going to be interviewing, and it's all very quiet, very private, where he wants to deal with the trauma that occurred. I mean, it was quite an event for a bridge to collapse in a community, a small community like this, and 46 people losing their lives, and also the advent of the Mothman. Not everybody saw this thing, but whatever it was or wasn't, it's a pretty. I mean, put yourself in the shoes. I have actually spoken to about 6 of the original witnesses over the years, and so they want to deal with the trauma that followed, and actually look for solutions to help with people that have been through this. And they've acknowledged how well the town has done with for the force of the Walmsley family and Carolyn Harris, and the way that they have rebuilt this community. And there's just a lot to deal with. So Bill has become a good friend. He his wife and Amanda, and they're really great people. And I can't imagine better people to approach those to find out about their experience and how this all affected them. We're going to be tonight. We're going to be going out to the TNT area again, as we always do. I brought my 3rd generation night vision goggles. I'm hoping that the stars are out because to look at a star field in the night vision goggles is phenomenal, just phenomenal. You will see stars that you'll never see with a naked eye.
Sure.
So we're just actually we don't always have much of a plan. Sometimes the most fun is going to a restaurant and sitting for an hour just talking. And, that reminds me of the one other thing I wanted to say about the Mothman Festival is this is a place that you can go where perhaps in your family or perhaps at work, you can't talk about this stuff. But, man, you can talk about it with like-minded people about all kinds of subjects at the Mothman Festival and other conferences. So I just can't stress enough how much fun it is. And it doesn't cost anything to get in. The only thing that'll cost you a few bucks is to get a ticket for the hayride that night. And you want to get there early and get your ticket. And I would suggest to wait in line, although Jeff and everybody is really excellent. Brittany and Jeff have their own spiel, shall we say, but you may want to wait for my hayride. I'm not saying it's the best, but it may be the most entertaining.
Well said. And I think anyone that's listened to the show and listened to you in the past would probably want to hang for your ride as well.
Well, you can, if they just come as they come 3 years, they can go on 3 different rides and get the full experience.
So I want to ask you here, Switch. The famed UFO report is out. It's been handily kicked to the curb by most. I think you and I have spoke. I know we've spoke off air about it, that we weren't expecting much out of it to be revealing. I did find some things in there when I look at it from a very analytical, what's reported, maybe pointing to stuff. But before we get your some comments on that, I'm curious, is there much UFO activity that's been associated with this part of the world that you're in right now?
I don't know about right now. It seems like it's going on all the time. It certainly was if you just look at the UFOs, this place was saturated with them, and that during that time of Point Pleasant. People could go out in the hills and look up and see these strange lights going overhead. I would say it is. I go back to the UFO news clipping service, which unfortunately has been gone for a few years. It started in, was it Lucius Farish out of Arkansas, perhaps? That back in the late 60s, and I have a decent collection broken up now and then through the years. But what he would do is he's the one that collected through various news clipping services UFO reports from all over the world. And the thing you find out about this, when you know how people would say, we haven't heard anything about UFOs lately.
Right.
Every once in a while you'll get something like O'Hare, Stevensville, the Phoenix Lights or whatever. But it's because the news media seldom picks up on it. But if you subscribe to the newspaper UFO news clipping service, you would find that these things are being seen all the time. And they're being reported in their local newspapers, but not getting beyond that. So I think that you would find if you could have that resource again, people are seeing these damn things all the time. People are having missing time all the time. They're having bizarre experiences all the time. So, but this has been a hotbed for years, and it certainly was. If you read the Mothman prophecies, it was just crazy with activity.
So, what's your thoughts on the report?
I confess I didn't read it. I heard about it afterwards. I was so cynical about it. I thought I don't believe we're going to get anything. And a gentleman named Joshua Kuchin, who's written some great books on the fairy connection with UFOs and the stranger aspects of Bigfoot. He wrote a long piece on it, talking about how it was that people are going to have to experience their own revelation, through their own experience, and people should not rely on the government. And I thought that was well said. And I always thought that if they were going to tell us anything, they were just going to let it hang like they always do and wait for the next celebrity breakup to kind of distract us from it. But and somebody else on Facebook quoted John Keel, when John Keel in the Mothman Prophecies said, these things are not coming from outer space. They don't need to come from outer space. They've been with us since the beginning. And so while I do suspect that some aspects of the phenomena do deal with some other intelligence that perhaps may come from outer space or elsewhere, I don't know where, there's a large part of it that is interactive with us somehow. We may even co-create it somehow. Again, we've talked so much about John Keel and his tag of ultra-terrestrials, Carl Jung and the collective unconscious, the Alexandria David Neal supposedly creating a tulpa learned from the Tibetans. There's just so much that, and the reflective factor, the paranormal mimicry, where there's so much of it that doesn't make sense from a purely extraterrestrial standpoint. So I'm perpetually in a state of I don't know. I will get pulled. You get pulled one way, and you think you've got some of it figured out, and then something else comes up that says, "Oh no, you don't." There's more than one answer, and we have to listen to what people are reporting. We have to respect them, and not because it doesn't fit our paradigm. And there was a time when I had a very strict paradigm of what it was all about, and then of course I discovered John Keel, and John Keel reveals so much for us. But it seems to me that the most advanced researchers, the ones that are doing the best work, listen to the people. If they have a Bigfoot experience and there's some stranger aspects to it, like orbs or vanishing Bigfoots or whatever, they pay attention to what they're saying. In fact, I'm reading a book right now by Tom Powell called The Edges of The Edges of Reality, I think. It's a second book. And he was a researcher that was very, very meticulous, very scientific in his approach, but nevertheless went to the dark side because he kept finding these stranger aspects of the Bigfoot phenomena. And he wrote that he would find people that would have these experiences, not just seeing the Bigfoot, but the weird stuff, strange lights and whatever. But batteries draining in their cameras and recorders. he said they were so relieved to find out that other people were having the strange experiences. It was like just, oh, thank God, we're not crazy. We didn't imagine this. Other people are having the same experiences.
Or if you're crazy, you're part of a large group. That has a certain amount of comfort as well.
Well, that's the point, is that number one, you listen to what people are saying, and then you find out that people that don't know each other and haven't compared notes, you're finding parallels and patterns in what they're talking about.
Absolutely. So
it's endlessly fascinating.
It sounds it. What motivated you to make the trip down? We're down to our last few minutes here.
Well, it's
winding down.
It's been 7 months. I was down here. I actually met Bill and Jackie Kuselis and Amanda Raber, and found out about their organization and what they were planning on doing last October. It came down. Seth Breedlove, who is the genius behind Small Town Monsters, and has done great work with documentaries and DVDs. I was in the second Mothman one he did called The Mothman Legacy, where I was one of the people interviewed. And so that's where I went down when Seth was out. He had a table out in front of the Mothman Museum, and I got to meet. You just always meet great people down here. So that was a really good time, and we've all been waiting. A bunch of us have been waiting to come down, and have a regular motley crew that comes down and from now and then. So it's just it's always good to see everybody, as well as experience the area.
Excellent. And do you have any other big travel plans coming up for future fringe field or field fringe reports?
About mid-July, I'll be speaking about paranormal Bigfoot in Ann Arbor at the Wyndham Arms, I think it is. I don't have the exact date. I think it's July 17th, thereabouts. And I'm going to have to hustle on that one. I've got a lot of ground to cover to try and condense that down into something. I don't usually speak on Bigfoot, but I had a neat connection that got me there. And then and the weekend after the Mothman Festival, I'll be speaking on the Shaver Mystery at the Van Meter Visitor Festival in Van Meter, Iowa, which is just west of Des Moines. Another great festival, which has started out with humble beginnings, but it's going to have some really big-name speakers, namely Ken Gerhardt and some other big names that are going to be there this year, as well as some of the regulars. David Weatherly is another great researcher. He's written books on black-eyed kids and cryptids and so forth. So and it'll be fun. The Shaver Mystery is always fun to revisit. And I have to say about the Van Meter Festival, this is another place where it's much smaller than Mothman. But I have met some just phenomenal people there.
The folks that you've mentioned, very impressive numbers and folks that you've talked about.
So it's
you have a big fringe, field fringe schedule planned up, and I think it's fantastic for all of us at Matt Malley's Military X-Files. Any special message that you want to leave for the rest of the crew that's out on their secret mission? You're not on a secret mission. You're just on a mission.
No, I'm kind of. This is kind of interesting. I'm really looking forward to see what these secret missions will reveal.
Reveal.
Everything comes together. Yes.
What the absence is.
Yes. Well, so it's sure to be good.
Well, thanks, Switch, for jumping in and giving us this very special fringe report. And I want to thank Mack for allowing me to take the controls here for the show. It's been, as always, a wonderful opportunity to speak to the great audience that follows Matt Malley Military X-Files. On behalf of Mack,
may I say, great to be here, and thanks for having me.
Well, as always, sir. And for Mack and 1-1, Raven, Club, and the rest of the gang that shows up, I do want to run down our folks that we always try to recognize. Homes for Our Troops is the charity. If you want to work with a broadband support to veterans, these are for veterans that are combat wounded and have requirements for their ability to enjoy life and to function fully. They custom build homes around their needs. so that they can rightfully do and prosper the way they want. And it's a fantastic charity that does incredibly good things for every donation that you make. I'd also like to bring your attention to the Morgan Armstrong GoFundMe. It's Morgan Armstrong by the Carlos family. It's Alan Michael, which is spelled Mikel Armstrong. He is a Air Force Reserve pararescueman, and he has been stricken with cancer, and he has been stricken with cancer at a time where he is not actually eligible for benefit because he's not on active duty. I'm supporting this personally, and I ask if you have a couple minutes. This is a very important charity. As Mack has often talked about, it drives me nuts what we have to go through with active duty and veterans and these other small places where people fall into the gaps and cracks in between. So Home for Our Troops, and if you have a chance, the Morgan Armstrong GoFundMe, if you just hit the GoFundMe, you'll be able to find it. As always, the People's Mosquito Project, Ross Sharp, the Director of Engineering and Technical Matters, leading, as Mack likes to say, the Mad Englishman, on this project. We are getting ready to start Operation Crossbow. That's the next phase of work that's going to be done on this magnificent airplane to bring rebuilding a flyable Mosquito aircraft, DH-98 style, back to the skies of the UK. And a special thanks to Parnon Estates, good friends who are importing some of the finest and producing some of the finest Greek olive oil. Parnon Estates throws some support to the charities that we speak about, and I appreciate their support, and I always like to give them a plug when we can. So for Mack, Juan, and the rest of the gang, Mack Malley's Military X-Files, we wish you all the best and be safe.